Hello everybody and welcome back to Codebase channel. Here we give you to teach you tutorials on web development and other tech skills. And right now we are currently learning CSS, and in today's topic we're going to touch CSS colors, CSS fonts and CSS text. Now before we move forward, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that you can be updated whenever we post a new video. So without further delay, let's get right into the topic of today. Now in the last video we were able to touch CSS margins and paddings as well as borders and all those basic things you need to know about CSS. But in this video, we're going to talk about the CSS colors, the CSS text, and the CSS fonts, like I said before. And these are the basic things you will need to know because you're going to be manipulating them constantly while you are making use of CSS. All right. So this is what we did in the last class, in the last video, and we actually don't need this anymore. So I'm going to have to come and scrape everything out. So without further ado, I'll go to my VS Code and then I'm going to wipe everything here out. Now you don't necessarily need to wipe this out in your own system. You can just comment it out if you want to comment it out, but I actually don't need it anymore. That's why I'm wiping it out. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl A, delete, and then I'm going to type step universal selector margin 0, padding 0. So we're going to go to our HTML and we're going to type a few things. All right, so we'll start with the basics. We'll start with the h1 tag as always. So you can see your text in a very bold format. This is a text, and in this part I'm going to name this part the CSS colors. I'm going to call this the CSS colors. Yeah, CSS colors, that's okay right here. Then after the h1 I'm going to put a little div, and I'm going to call the div class of box. Okay, I'm not going to put anything inside the box, or I'm going to put another text. I'll say this is a section. Let's put a text inside the box so I'll show you the difference now. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the CSS colors. Now, as you basically know, there are 3 ways to apply colors to your elements in CSS. There are 3 ways you can apply colors to your elements in CSS. The first way is pretty simple. All you have to do is, as you know, target the element. I'm going to say h1. Then you simply say color. Then you call out the name of the color, in this case red. I'm going to say font size 68 pixels. So ignoring this one right now, leave this one for now. This is the main focus right here. This is the first way you can call out your color in CSS, by simply calling out the name of the color. In this case I just simply said CSS color red, and it gave me what? The red text that you can see right here. It's pretty basic, there's nothing special to it. However, there is another way you can call out your colors. All right, now you can call out the colors using the RGB code or the hex code. All right, and honestly I prefer using the hex code because the hex code gives you so many variations. All right, now there are plenty of colors out there and not all of them have names. That's the honest truth. I mean, they all have names, but you can't know the name of everything. Okay, so sometimes you have to go online and get the hex code of a particular color or the RGB code. So I'm going to show you how it works now. So the way you declare the RGB code of the way you declare your colors using RGB is pretty simple. All you have to do is say color, then you say RGB, and RGB stands for red, green, blue. Then inside this RGB you have to enter 3 variables. All right, 3 numerical variables separated by a comma, and each of these comma will represent the red, green, and blue color altogether. So what does that mean? It means if I come here, I will enter a number between 0 and 255. The numbers has to be between 0 and 255. So I'll enter a number, I'll call it 35, comma, I'll say 35, comma, then 40, comma, and 200. And you can see that this gave me the color blue on the spot. So when you use the RGB mode to declare your color, RGB stands for red, green, blue. And what you do inside this parentheses here is that you declare the 3 numerical variables and you separate them by a comma. So the first one is the red, the second one is the green, and the third one is the blue. And this random number I simply put here gave me what? The blue color you guys are seeing right here, right now. So it's nothing too complex, as you can see. It's not into big, it's not into, brand like that. It's just a simple color stuff. So I'm going to put it on another line, I'm going to comment it out. So like I said, this is the first way you can, this is another way you can comment your colors using the name. Hold on, let me put this in there. Color, red. I'm going to list them out. And the last way we can apply colors to our CSS is by using the hex code. Now when you want to apply the hex code of a color, you have to first start by using the hash character. then you have to put the figures, that's in the remaining figures. Now the figures can be a combination of both numbers and letters altogether. For example, I can say 2C to C1107, and this will give me a dark brown color right here, as you can see. And if I come back to my browser, my text will look dark brown, almost black in fact, but it's actually not black, it's dark brown. Okay, or I can give it a different color. Let's give it hashtag CC5500. This will give me like an orange color, and if I come back to my browser, that's what I get here. A dark like orange color. This color is actually called burnt orange. Yeah, I know, burnt orange, but still that's the name of the color and it works. So these are the three ways we can apply CSS. We can apply color using CSS. You can either apply color using apply the color using the hex code, which starts with the hash character. Now remember, when we are applying color using hex code, this hash is not targeting any ID. It's just how you start putting the hex code of any color. Okay, then as well, you can also apply color using what? Let me jot this one out. The color using the name of the color, and you can also apply the color using the RGB code. I'm going to put 0,0,0. The RGB code, e.g. RGB 00. Just using the RGB code. Let's leave that one alone. Now, at the same time, you don't necessarily have to memorize all the entire color hex code, offhand. You don't need to do that. That is reason about the color code. You don't need to do that. In your VS Code, you can simply call out the name of a color here. Please just pardon me for a little while. You can call out the name of a color here. I can say orange. Then see the sweet thing about the VS Code here. Once you put your cursor on this little box that appears, it brings out a color selector for you here. And you can see that this color selector, it is showing you your color in the RGB mode. All you have to do is click here and it will change to the hex code immediately. So you don't necessarily have to memorize the color code. Okay, you can go online, get a color code. You can just go online and search for, okay, what is the hex code for this particular color. It shows you the hex code. You take it from there, bring it back in here and make use of it. You don't have to memorize everything. All right, I'm saying this for your own sake now. So now that that's done, let's move on to CSS text. Sorry, not CSS text, pardon me. Now we're going to talk about color in the section now. Now, as you know, every section has both the color and the background color. In the last video we did concerning margin and padding, I made use of a particular CSS property called the background color, and I have not really talked about it very well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it right now. Now, when you're dealing with a section, in this case where we apply color, we are dealing with a text. But when you're dealing with a section, when you want to apply the color, the rules change a bit. Okay, the section I created here is called what? Box. Good. So if I come here and say dot box, and I give it background, and I give it color, and I say the color should be red in this case. Now, this red color won't apply to the section itself, but will apply to the content of the section. Are you getting what I mean? This red color will not apply to the div section of box, but will apply to these texts inside the section. That is the content itself. And if we go to the browser, what you will see is that this text is actually red. Okay, not the background of the text that is red, but the text itself. Okay, and that's because this property of color here only applies to the content of the element, not the actual element itself. If you want to give the actual element its own separate color, what you need to do is that you need to call out the property of background color. Now, the background property is actually a topic of its own we're going to touch later in the CSS, but for now, let's just touch the background color in particular. Okay, guys? So, when you call out the background color, you can give it any color you want. Since my text is red, I'm going to make the color to be blue. Background color, I'm going to call it blue. I'm going to come and give it width and height. I'll say width should be 180 pixels. Then height should be 62 pixels. and if I come back to the browser here, now you can see that the text, the section has a background color of blue in this case. Now this blue color is applied to the actual section itself. So remember what I said, when you give color property, when you declare your color property in CSS, the color property applies to the content of the element, the text inside the element, not to the element itself. If you want to give color to the element itself, you make use of the property of background color. And again, I am going to talk about the background, the CSS backgrounds as a topic of its own. So for now, the only one I need to explain now is this background color that is here. So now I've showed you how to apply color. So let's move on down to CSS fonts. Okay, so I'm going to come to my HTML here. I'm going to create a comment and say CSS fonts. So in this CSS font, you already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a simple p tag, then I'm going to give it lorem 10. And I believe you guys have talked about this lorem ipsum in HTML, so I'm not going to explain it further for you guys. So let's go to style.css. Now, when it comes to styling up your font, it is something you have to manipulate constantly, and you need to understand something about fonts. Fonts actually subconsciously sends a message to the client, that is the user that is currently accessing the site. Okay, when making use of fonts to design a site, you can't use playful like fonts, okay, for a company website. Let us say if a lawyer calls you out to please design a website for his law firm, and you now use a playful font for a lawyer, for a law firm, to design the website of a law firm, that is very, very wrong. You have to use a formal font. Okay, and to clarify this thing, we have two main kind of fonts that is out there. We have the serif font and the sans serif fonts. Okay, they are called the serif fonts and the sans serif fonts. One is the formal, while one is the informal font. Now, I'm not saying that the fonts are bad either way. I'm just saying there are different conditions where they apply. When you're building a website for a particular company, for a company or a corporate entity, you have to use formal fonts, and I'll show you the difference between the both of them. Don't worry. Okay, when you're designing for a website for a company, you have to use formal font. Then if you're designing for maybe like a fashion, for like a tailor or for like a fashion designer or something like that, you can use those informal fonts like sans serif and all that. Okay, let's just dive right into it so you can see what I mean. So I'm going to target the p tag. Then we're going to come and give it font. Now, to style up your font, you start with the basic one, font family. And this changes how your font appears. Now, as you can see from my list of fonts out here, this thing is showing me what? My VS Code is showing me multiple fonts out here. And I'll explain what it simply means. It's actually not that hard at all. Now, what it simply means is this. If you should put more than one font, if I create my air quotes right here, I'm just going to take it from here. Now, if you look at this font that is here, what this thing simply means is this, okay? When you use multiple fonts in a font family, all these things you're seeing here are font faces. If you don't know what font faces are, you should go and check out your Microsoft Word. If you're typing a document in Microsoft Word and you want to change how the appearance of your text look, you go and change the appearance of the text from the font face. Where you selected that Calibri, Tahoma, Times New Roman, or anyone you make use of when you're typing a document. Okay? So the same thing applies here in CSS code, but in CSS it's actually called font family, not font face. That's the only difference. And when you call out multiple font faces here, what you are doing is that you're trying to replace the font when one font is lacking. So what this simply means is, let my font be Times New Roman. Okay, if Times New Roman is not available on the user system, replace it with this other font that is here, the Times font. Or if this Times font and this Times New Roman font is not available on the user system, replace it with a serif font. That's what it simply means there. Now, this serif here is what we used to put in our informal fonts, that is fonts that are not exactly formal per se. Before I move forward, I'm going to come back to the HTML here, and I'm going to put a b tag after this p tag, so I'll show you what I mean. lorem 10. You see what I mean when I'm done, okay? So now that I've talked about the font family here, so like I said, what this thing does is simple. When this first font is missing, it replaces it with the second font that is here. If the second font is missing, it replaces it with any other serif font that exists out there. That is what it simply does. Or you can simply put in the name of a particular font if you know the name. And I'm going to use my favorite font, which is Tahoma. You can simply put in the name of a single font like this, Tahoma. or when you're not sure whether the user has that particular font that you're using to design your site, you can put the names of multiple fonts out there, so that when the font available is not, when the font you used is not available on the user system, it can easily switch in between the other fonts. Okay, so that's the difference between using a singular name. If I come here, you look at the fonts, can you see how straightforward it is? This is a formal font. It is not like this one that is down here that has all these curved edges or pointed edges. The edges here are, pretty straightforward and formal. So coming back to what I was saying, you can either use the name of the font of a single font like so, or you can call out multiple names like so. Using the air quote, I'll call out the names of maybe Lato. I'll say, okay, Lato. If Lato is not available, use prompt. Now these fonts, you may not have them on your system, but I have them on my system and I make use of them. If prompt is not available, make use of Montserrat. If this is not available, simply make use of the word sans serif font. Now, the difference between a serif font and a sans serif font is that the sans serif font means, this sans simply means without. Okay, the serif font represents the font that has those pointed edges or those curved edges. Yeah, the serif font simply means it represents fonts that have what? Curved edges. While the sans serif font, sans means without. So you're saying fonts without the curve. That's what it simply means. You can go and read the meaning online if you want to read the meaning, but in short, in summary, that's just what it points out to there. Okay, so now that we talked about the font family enough, if you come back to your browser, you see that the text has applied there. And now that we've talked about the font family enough, let us move on to the font size. Now, I've made use of font size so many times, and I believe that since you've been with us since the beginning of CSS till now, you should know that the work of font size is to increase the size of your text in CSS. That is all, to increase the size of the text. And the rule is simple: the bigger the number, the bigger your font size. The smaller the number, the smaller the font size. All right, so if I say here should be 62 pixels and I come back to my browser, my font will indeed be 62 pixels. You can see how big it looks right here, right now. Okay, nothing too special, right? Moving on. At the same time, if I should say this thing should reduce from 62 pixels to 32 pixels, and I come back to the browser as well, you will see that the size has reduced. So when it comes to font size, the rules are simple: the bigger the number, the bigger your font; the smaller the number, the smaller the font itself. That is all. Now, at the same time, you can also do mathematical calculations on this font size you see here, which is actually not hard at all. Now, to do that, all you have to do is inside the font size, you just have to say calc. Okay, when you call out this variable called calc, you can now come in here and put in your mathematical equations, equations, whatever you call it. So I can just come and say, okay, let my font size be 30 pixels plus 32 pixels. And this will give us actually give us 62 pixels. So if you come back to your browser here, our text is big again. I have added two texts together. I've added the value of two texts together to give us a single text, which is what, 62 pixels. But I just wanted to show you that you can also use mathematical equations. The reason for this is simple. If you want a font that you are using, maybe you want your title font to be a certain size, and you want the subtitle font to be 1/4 of that font, you can easily do it here in the mathematical equation here. You can just call out the calc variable. You can call out the calc, open the parentheses, then put in your mathematical equation there to calculate your font. Maybe I said my H1 should be 68 pixels, and I want the P tag of the H1, this P tag that is under the H1, to be 1/3 of the H1 in size. So you can just come in here, type out the calculation, and then you get your results. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is CSS text, but I'm going to stop here for now. I want you guys to practice and get a hang of it. I don't like giving out too much information at once. I want you guys to practice this one you've done so far, play around with it, get the hang of it, and then we'll move on to the next one. Right, the point of this tutorial is to make sure that you understand it by the time we are through with it. Okay, so while you're practicing, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that you'll be updated whenever we post a new video. Once again, this is Code Vase. Now, just like we tutorial you on web development and other tech skills, we also take on projects, web development projects, and other tech projects like UI UX, data analysis. So if you need one, or you have someone who's in need of one, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next.